Hey, listen in. If you're still strapping your expensive camera to your neck with a flimsy strap that looks like more fashion than function, congrats, you're living on the edge. But hey, if you'd rather not risk turning your camera gear into a pile of broken dreams, then maybe, just maybe, check out Cotton Carrier Camera Carrying System. You can carry on living dangerously, or you can carry gear safe and sound with cottoncarrier.com. While you're in there, use code BTW10 for a 10% discount on anything found on the website. cottoncarrier.com.
Beyond the Wild.
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. How we doing, fellas?
Doing good. Doing really good. It's been a long time.
It has been forever.
It's really good to catch up with you guys again.
At least 20 minutes.
Yeah. We don't do this very often, but we are doing 2 in a row tonight. So, yeah, we just chatted and caught up with each other. So,
Mark, did you change shirts?
Got to bridge the gap, right?
And
for a while. We didn't do much for a while, and now we do 2 tonight. And yes, man, this is a new podcast. I got a different shirt and a different hat. Had a 15-minute break.
Raising the bar.
I went and brushed my dog. So
Productive.
the only thing that changed on me is I probably have a bunch of dog hair at some point, somewhere. So we've had some requests from a few people to get people on the podcast that not everybody would necessarily know. And I was scouring Instagram the other day, and I came across a story, and I'm just going to read it to you because I think it probably resonates with more of us than what probably saw it. And so I want to make sure everybody hears this. It's very well written. My late night thoughts. I think many people who work a corporate job can relate. The last 2 weeks have been one of the really tough periods at work, the kind that leaves you drained and questioning your career decisions. But as I leaked through some of my wildlife photos this evening, I felt myself starting to breathe again. My anxiety started to lower. My images take me back to the quiet moments and the encounters with nature, the stillness of the forest, and the thrill of seeing animals wild and free. It reminded me that my job is just a means to an income. It doesn't define me, and it certainly doesn't own me. Even though that's the way I've been feeling lately, trapped. Wildlife photography and being outdoors have taught me that there's a whole life beyond the walls of work. A natural world that grounds me, fuels my passion, and brings me peace. That's where I feel most like myself. And that's what keeps me going throughout the difficult weeks like this one. I'm counting down the hours to the weekend where I can get back into nature and feel like me again. That was penned by Danny COYNE. British Columbia.
I was going to have everybody guess. Gosh dang.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry, Jason.
No, that's okay.
British Columbia photographer, and welcome to the show, Danny.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on tonight.
I think what the whole thing hit me, but I think what resonated is your opening statement. I think there's many people out there that work corporate jobs that can relate, and I don't think it should be narrowed down to corporate jobs. It can be government jobs. It can be, just jobs that require a lot of your time and thought process and that kind of thing throughout the day. But I think a lot of people can relate to what you're articulating there. And it's very well written, and thought that it's something that everybody needed to hear and that we probably need to discuss. Danny, how did you get started with wildlife photography?
I'm recently actually quite new to wildlife photography. So my industry pretty much came to a screaming halt during the pandemic back in 2020. And it was the first time since I was 22 years old. I'm 45 now. So I reached 40 during the pandemic. And it was the first time since then I didn't work over a 50-hour work week in a high-paced job. My my job went down to 36 to 40 hours a week, so I kind of felt like it was a part-time job at that point. And my wife and I actually started taking on. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere, to see people, so we started doing more backpacking and hiking and getting outdoors, and it felt so great, to be honest. So we were out there and taking photos, with our iPhones, and then it just kind of dawned on me. I said, I've always had a desire to be able to capture the nature and wildlife better than what I can with my phone or just a point and shoot camera. And now is the time. I finally have time I can learn a passion to. So I start to look around, like, how can I do this? And well, lucky for me, the whole world went online, and I started learning photography through literally, well, listening to like you guys on your podcast, watching online seminars with Johnny Marriott and others, and just kind of did it all remote. And then it became quite natural to me. So it became, I don't want to say it like took over my life, but it became a very quick, my wife calls it obsession. I call it my passion. But there was more to that. It's just like, it felt right. It felt like this is what I'm meant to do. It's connecting everything that I absolutely love in life, being outdoors, observing nature, pursuing wildlife, being with my wife. And then I found out, I pulled back another layer, and there's this wonderful, amazing, supporting community behind it all. And that's exactly, like, I think what draws me more to it than anything. Ron, when I posted that, I mean, yeah, I was kind of in a ranting stage. I rewrote that a few times, and I didn't know if I just needed an outlet. And I was I was editing some photos at night, and it just made me be able to breathe again. And I'm like, this is why I love wildlife photography, because it brings me back this joy, and it brings down my anxiety, and it connects everything for me. But anyways, the next day, I had over 50 messages. I was blown away by, like you said, it wasn't just, for me, I'm caught in the corporate world, but it was first responders. It was people working in industry jobs, and just like it resonated with them. And again, it just came back on, and I said to my wife, Marina, I said, look at this, look at the community that I'm in. I'm like, this is where I'm meant to be. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. And that's now become my passion, and why I'm so involved in it today.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Lori Beer, said that to me, and because I think she knew I was kind of feeling the same way through work, and just kind of feeling trapped in the work world and not being able to be out where I wanted to be, and yet at the same time, there are different times of year that are better than others for wildlife photography, but you can't be out enough.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can definitely be in too much. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that hit home. That hit home right away, and it hit me right between the eyes. And I appreciate your words, because it verbalizes where, the point that I get to often. We weren't meant to be indoor creatures.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
So, and I think, that's why Mark has done what he's done. Jason does what he does. And that's why I do what I do. And whether it's writing or photographing or videoing or whatever the case may be, is try to reconnect people to that natural world. And I think you hit it spot on. It's where we're meant to be. It's not an option. That's
No.
where we were meant to be.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. We're not supposed to be in a small little cubicle or in a vehicle driving for 12 hours a day to do a sales call or whichever. But I kind of I start to think about this more, and I'm like, well, what's the big driving like factor behind it? And like at work, in my job, I'm always hitting content deadlines. I have a ton of pressure. I'm in like the caught up of like the doing mode. I have to go reach these targets. And it's usually not underneath my directive. It's underneath someone else's directive. Um, but when you're out in nature and you're observing, like, and I posted in there, it's like, the stillness and the quietness. And just the other weekend, I was setting up some trail cameras, scouting out another area, and I just literally stopped for a second, and I caught myself for like, not kidding, like 5 minutes. It was just the birds were chirping, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I'm not taking any photos, but then this is where it clicked for me. It's that I'm not doing right now. I'm actually being present. I'm being a part of what I'm supposed to be a part of. And then when we observe wildlife through our lens, and this is the thing, is like, someone once told me that when you get into wildlife, or when you get into photography, you'll never see light again the same. I agree with that, but I also believe as wildlife photographers, you'll never observe an animal the same way ever again. So when I'm watching animals through that lens and I'm observing them, they're not, they're not going towards someone else's agenda and in that doing mode. They're literally being present. They're trying to survive. They're wild, but they get to dictate on what they have, like what they do throughout its life. And I think that that's where the disconnect a little bit of being in a profession and working hard. It's like, we need to have that in our life to feel like that peace that I'm talking about, is and being able to breathe. I think it's important, and that might look so different for many people. Like for us, it's looking through a lens and pursuing that next encounter. But my wife will sit on the deck and watch hummingbirds, and she gets that same connection. So, and I tell that to a lot of people. It's like, you don't need to be a wildlife photographer to experience this. You just go have your lunch down by a creek during your lunch break, and you're going to come back a whole different person. You'll be grounded by nature.
It fires our senses, right? When we're out in nature, all our senses are active. Whereas in other workplaces, some of it's distracting from our senses. So our sense of smell, I mean, we don't need that at work, or hearing to the point of recognizing things or picking up something that's unfamiliar. So you're 100%, from my experience, bang on accurate that being outdoors is so foreign, unfortunately, to so many people whose lives dictate otherwise, that just the smell, walking on the tundra, the smells that come, or laying on the tundra, even better, the smells that envelop you can't help but calm the soul. Yeah. You breathe it in. And I think all the senses in outdoors, observing the animals, paying close attention, the present tense breaks our minds, or better word, focuses our minds instead of wandering on anxieties to what's around us. And I think that's extremely therapeutic. I find that. I mean, a week or 10 days, we used to say in the previous podcast, a 10-day trip was ideal, because by the end of it, I found when it's feasible, of course, I get that, but, and I know it's often not, but you can really notice the difference in just stress levels, interior stress levels, and anxiety. So, but anything can do it. A lunch break, like you said, at a river, where the sound of the babbling brook and the bird song, that resets to a degree. So, I mean, that's what you're saying is so important. And I think our audience totally embraces the importance of that, and hopefully recognizes it more and more, that that's the driver, right? The images are great. They take us back, and they'll try to excel at the images, but the driver is the tranquility, the wonder, the present tense, the reality. Because, right, I mean, were we meant to live in corporate worlds as animals? We are animals, beings on this planet. My vote is no, with an exclamation mark times 10, right? You know, think of the YouTube channels about getting back to nature. Sean's channel about building a homestead in the wilderness are so crazy popular, because some people are able to do that and live that way, and so many are not, due to financial limitations or lifestyle. So I'm thrilled that you found it, this outlet, and are developing it. And from your photography, you're clearly celebrating it and doing exceptionally well.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing what you said there that made me think of something is like I'm a very high energy type of person, and I'm not usually the most patient type of person. But even my team at my job can tell when I go out for a 2 day, adventure, in nature and pursuing wildlife with my camera, is because it's taught me patience. And it's because, as we all know, as a wildlife photographer, I will sit on an animal, waiting, sorry, for an animal for 5 hours for a lynx or a bobcat to walk up that trail. And I have full confidence in myself that if it happens, I can get that shot. But that's carried over into my marriage, into my friendships, into my entire family life, but also into my work too as well. And I learned that by being outside, being more connected. So I do feel and believe that the more that we're connected to nature, we grow as individuals, and we get to share that with other people. I mean, in my position, I'm very fortunate enough to be able to lead a team of just close to 200 people, and my actions are going to be reflected. But I'm also mentoring a lot of people, so if they see me being patient, more methodical, and more at peace, then they're going to start to adapt that, and us as an organization actually get stronger. And then they also get curious. This is what I love about wildlife photography is that our photos are a window to an experience that we get to share with others. And people ask me when I come back after the weekend, what did you get? Like, can you tell us the story behind it? And it creates curiosity to them. But it's not just about the animal. They start to ask more important questions too, like, well, where does that elk live? Where do you find that? Where do you do this? And all of a sudden, they're going out the next weekend and they're experiencing nature that they've never experienced because we got to share our passion with them. So, how cool is that, right? I mean, it's meant to be shared, and I truly believe that by sharing stuff, and this is, I kind of want to touch base a little bit on my take on social media a little bit, because it can be used in the right tool and it can be used in a wrong way too as well. And I always ask myself questions that, if I didn't have social media, would I still be a wildlife photographer? If that question ever becomes, no, I wouldn't, I'm doing it for the wrong reasons. It's time to take a step back, reset, because that is not my intention. That was not my intention to get on when I first did this, when I got into it. That's not what pulled me into it. And in fact, there's times I think we've all take breaks from social media and stuff, but what ends up happening is I miss my community of people more than anything else. But what it does do is it creates awareness, and it helps share your adventures. And in life is enhanced when you get to share your experiences with people. So when you post that photo, I mean, all three of you guys have been incredible mentors to me, learning throughout the process. I look forward to all your guys' posts and your stories and your podcasts. And that creates me even more curious, going, oh, Jason, I never went for really pursued elk until I start watching your photos and learning that, and your passion talking about it. Well, that created curiosity to me. Well, now every year I book 7 days off during peak rut season to go in. I'm off in the Rockies with my camera. And that's the impact that we have on each other on this, right? So it's really cool to be able to do that. And that's just nature. Like, we're able to share that experience with nature with others through our photography and through our social media and such as that. One of the coolest experiences I've had is I was about sharing photos, was I was invited over to a naturalist group, and most of these people were in their elderly age, and they weren't able to get out and actually go for a long hike or go into the mountains like we do. So I spent about 2 hours presenting photos and telling stories behind every one of them. And it was so cool that every one of those people got to live vicariously through the photos, the window that I provided. So they got to have that experience. And then I would get messages back from them saying, hey, I didn't know that we actually had this lynx that lived in this area. So we went up, we didn't find him, but it was pretty neat to know that that animal is literally in this area that we never knew about before. We really appreciate you telling us about that, because we looked at that natural habitat a little bit differently. So again, it just goes back to is being able to share our wildlife photography and our experiences, it's you can't be greedy with it. You know, that's I think it's meant to be shared, and that's us taking nature and sharing it with others.
Education, conservation go hand in hand, right? So more people that are aware, people live in urban centers aren't, or maybe not even, as you say, what's in their backyard. And the more they're familiar with that, the more they'll care and invest in it. So yeah, that's fantastic.
Exactly.
I was just going to say, I think you really hit on something that's been, we've talked about it a lot lately, but it's kind of become a key focus for me. And it's how do we, as wildlife photographers, are doing this, give back, right? And I think you hit on a really big way that we give back all the time. And I've had multiple people reach out to me and thank me directly for those images and the stories that I share because they can't have that experience. And that's there's many reasons why people can't have those experiences. It could be limited on budget, it could be physical issues, it could be sickness, illness, who knows. But the fact that they're so appreciative of being able to live vicariously through our images and our stories is it's meaningful, right? It actually means something. So I think that's cool that you touched on that, and the fact that you already are kind of thinking that way is pretty powerful. It took me a while. I've said it before, I was kind of selfish, for lack of a better way to think about it. Not intentionally, but just wasn't thinking outside of the experiences I was having and sharing my photos and whatever it might be. But that whole mindset for me has shifted significantly, and that's a good way to look at it. So that's powerful.
Yeah, thanks. I think that one of my next goals is to actually start talking with school groups and kids, and especially starting about that grade 10, grade 11 level, and because they're just at the point of being curious. They're coming out of school in the next few years. We're in a digital age. I'd love to see more and more people getting outside and doing that. Many years ago, I was more involved in like fisheries conservation work and wildlife conservation work, and volunteering. And I still, to this day, I work with the wildlife biologist in the community. Actually, that's another thing that's really cool about us as wildlife photographers. So we have a really good population of wild sheep in our area, and they're suffering right now from a disease called MOVI. It's a pneumonia that's really kind of hurting. It's not just happening in British Columbia; it's happening in a lot of areas. So we're doing lots of counts, but I'll get the biologist that calls me up because, like any biologist, they just don't have money these days, and they say, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend? Do you want to? If I give you some areas where you go check out these sheep and take. I need close-up photos of their face and if they're got snotty noses, if they're sick or not." I said, absolutely. I'm like, this is pretty cool. Like, you're going to tell me where the collared animals are, so I know where to find them. And all right, this is a win-win, right? So I get in there and be able to take some photos, do some counts for them. And then at the same time, with that, I get to learn about it. And then I also get to be able to share that with others on social media posts, on presentations. And then, like how Mark says, is that it's a conservation. It creates awareness for what's literally happening in our backyards of our wildlife that a lot of people don't know about, right?
Yeah, Jimmy Breitenstein, who's been a guest of the podcast before, and he's helping with this youth camp that we're doing right now. And he does that. I didn't realize he did that, but he does a lot of school presentations and visiting classrooms and sharing. And I think that's another good way. So that's cool that you're doing that too. It's got me thinking, like, I'm hoping to try to retire from the corporate world sooner than later. And I think that'd be a fun to give back to, so.
Yeah. Well, and plus some of those kids can help me keep up with all the software updates that I can.
That's a fact. You might need their help. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I help you. You help me.
That's right. No, I don't mean to make this transactional, but since you're here.
Right.
Yeah.
Danny, you said you've only been photographing since 2020, roughly.
Yeah.
But you worked with biologists and you worked as a volunteer before that.
Yeah.
Where did that passion come from?
So before I got into wildlife photography, I was actually a pro staff angler, like fisherman, for a couple companies, Max Lure and Procure out of the Pacific Northwest. So I had a really big love. I grew up in a small town of like 2,800 people at most on a big ranch. we grew up with in the outdoors. My dad took me out, and me and my brother, we learned how to like literally track animals at a young age. We learned how to fish. I mean, we just thought that this is what everyone does, right? Is that you go out and your day, your weekends from school, you grab a lunch and grab a backpack and you hit the stream, go fishing, and you go hiking and see mom and dad around 8, 9 o'clock at night type of thing. Well, then I moved to the city, and my wife came from a small town too, and I realized that not everybody grew up the way I did, and it was actually quite eye opening for me. It was quite eye opening for me, and then we were fishing a lot in this area, and one of our lakes actually had a die off. It was a Kokanee Lake, which is a landlocked sockeye lake, and it just got depleted of oxygen. But there's a water issue. Is we had too many water licenses pulling off the stream. It caused oxygen depletion of the lake. Anyways, we had this huge die off of this lake. Well, it was an aha moment for me because, and I remember this was actually in 2010, and I remember this amazing resource that so many people took advantage of, and then all of a sudden overnight it was pretty much gone. So my wife and I had a really good conversation, and we said we need to change the way that we're thinking. Is if we're taking from a natural resource, fishing a lake or whichever, we have to have a responsibility and stewardship to give back to that resource. So we made a commitment, and I was fishing about 100 days out of the year, that if I did 100 days of fishing out of the year, we're going to do at least 50 days of conservation work or efforts. So I contacted some local conservation groups, and long story short, I got like 2 good mentors. And by 2 years, I was conducting large fish traps, like numeration counts, escapement rate counts. And we were probably, between my wife and I, 300-400 volunteer hours a year in fisheries work. Well, then it kind of veered over to the wildlife side. And a lot of these groups are, and I'm not opposed to hunting at all. I grew up in a hunting home, not a trophy hunter in any way, but we saw this side of wildlife was actually even worse. Like there's a lot of users of wildlife, but there's not a lot of people. It's like the same 10, 15 people that show up to a controlled burn, for example, right? So it's just because there's lack of awareness. So we start to get more involved in that. And from there, I joined like some of the wild sheep groups here, the Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance when they're doing their counts. And then I just offered hey, if I got a camera, I'm in good physical shape, I can go spend a few days in this country and start, I just asked the biologist, what do you need? And a lot of it's outreach, a lot of it's counting, recruiting. I kind of hacked it. I went to the university, our local university, and I wrote one heck of a good reference letter for every single volunteer, and they needed field work. So they got credits coming out with me. And all of a sudden I got 80 volunteers to run a fish trap or do a mountain goat count. It was good because what I did was I just went to a group. I mean, they were interested, but they never were asked before because it was always that same small group of people doing the same thing and asking their fishing game club, hey, why don't you guys come out? Well, you have 80 people there. And have you asked the wildlife biologists or the naturalists? Oh, we don't know if we really talk to them. Well, you should, because they really want to get involved. The last goat count that we did last summer, majority of the people were naturalists. Usually those are done by hunters in the area, and it's all it took was just an invite. So, it's getting all the stakeholders at a table and talking to each other and getting efforts combined. So yeah, that's where it started. It started with fish, and then it just kind of grew and grew. And I got to admit, I don't really pick up a fishing rod anymore because I can't put the camera down.
With more and more budget cuts in conservation, across states, provinces, and countries, citizen science is a wonderful place to step in.
Yeah.
And as you say, people may not be aware of that opportunity, and sharing those venues and times and invitations can really expand that. So this is great to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, citizen science is it's good because it's actually starting to trend a little bit. I don't know if you guys have noticed it. And that's good because it's, it is the naturalists, the hikers, the wildlife photographers starting to post it. We have in British Columbia, we have a really good app, and it's for mountain goat and bighorn sheep. So it starts usually around April and runs into about June. you literally use an app. You go out and you see the animals on the hill, and you count the nanny, how many nannies there are, how many kids there are, and you just upload the photo. It goes right to the biologist because they don't have money to get out anymore, but they use that citizen science to be able to manage the wildlife, right? So, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, for me, it's like, living in Canada, April, it's like, it's a long winter by then. It's like, okay, I'm ready to get out. And it's like the perfect excuse. Like the kids are dropping or the lambs are dropping. Let's go. And we make a good day of it. And I try to get my friends' kids out on it, because you give them a set of binoculars and it's like Easter egg hunting on the hillside. They're looking up and I found one. And, their excitement gets you excited, and, it's just reignites that passion.
That's basically what eBird is, isn't it? I mean, essentially it's a citizen
Well,
science.
sort of. Yeah.
I mean, it gets abused too, but that's what the intention is, So, and they actually have one. I can't remember what it's called, but Lydia told me last weekend it's for the mammals too. There's actually a very similar version to eBird for mammals. So, anyways,
yeah, I think.
What's the app, Danny? Sorry.
Oh,
Ron.
yeah, go ahead.
If you just go into, it's just a natal app through the BC Ministry of like the Ministry of Lands, Forests, Natural Resources. But I'm pretty sure if you just type in the Google, just put BC, like British Columbia, mountain goat, citizen science app, it'll pop up. It'll pop up on there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think if there's one area that we've failed as photographers, we do a good job of sharing our images. But if there's one area that we've failed where other groups might excel, it is in the area of conservation. And I think that we can all do a little bit more to give back in that area, be a part of the solutions rather than just being you're a non-consumptive user to a degree as a wildlife photographer, but you're still a user of that resource. And I think you're spot on getting out there and volunteering in whatever capacity. It doesn't have to be hiking around. It doesn't have to be out planting trees. It can be, but doesn't have to be able to make a difference. Gathering Christmas trees for fish habitat. I mean, just going dumping them on the ice and letting them melt their way in.
Yeah.
To provide structure. Just small things like that.
Well, and when I have talks with other photographers, they're always gung ho, and they're like, "Wow, that sounds great. How do we get involved?" And it's not that the lack of will or the lack of them trying.
No, I agree.
They just don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. And my piece of advice to anybody is just, well, if you're in Canada, you go to your local ministry biologist office or send them an email. You can find all the information on there. I don't know exactly how it works in the States, but just send an email and they'll get a hold of you. Or look at what the groups, just start Googling the groups that are doing conservation efforts, and just say, hey, can I come out and help? And I can tell you one thing that's in shortage of these days is volunteers. Every group out there needs more volunteers. It's a big crisis right now. So,
yep, for sure. That sometimes that's an interesting point, and it's something that maybe we could figure out better ways to do it. Because if you're not actively out looking for those opportunities, they're not blatantly obvious to people. And there's a lot of people, I think, if they knew about them, would volunteer, and they would love to go and participate in those kinds of things. I mean, everybody I know that's engaged in that kind of stuff has to go actively look for those opportunities. So maybe I don't know where to take that, but there's an opportunity there, I think, to have more people be able to volunteer just from an awareness perspective. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think that, honestly, Jason, like the wildlife photography community is growing so rapidly, so quick. I think we've got a huge, loud voice, and I'm watching it a little bit, and I'm not meaning to get political at all, but I am watching it from a distance as a Canadian down what's happening right now with your public lands in the States. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, look, I was kind of proud for our community, because I'm like, every post from a wildlife photographer right now is saying something. I'm like, yes, like that's a different user group finally speaking up. If this happened 15 years ago, that wouldn't have happened. It would have been more the hunting side or that side. And great, good on them.
Right.
But the other stakeholder, like the other people that use the public lands and care really a lot about those public lands and the wildlife that's on it, are speaking up. And I was pretty proud of our community the other day by seeing how many people stood up and made a post about it and spoke their mind. So it's I think every wildlife photographer that should reach out and pat their own back on that, because they deserve it for sure.
Keep going, because it's not over.
Yes.
Yeah.
As of today, June 26th, it is not over. So, yeah. Hopefully it is by the time this comes out, but who knows, right? So,
yeah.
Yeah, and you know what's cool about that? You said something. You said not to get political. And I've thought about this lately, and it's like, you know what? They make it political. This is not a political issue. This is every person in the States has a vested interest in this, regardless of your political leanings, regardless of your perspective. If you want to recreate, camp, fish, hike, hunt, photograph, rock climb, I mean, you could go on and on. Any outdoor activity, people are benefiting from the public lands. So it's been amazing to see so many groups come together too, and groups that would normally never even probably associate with each other, and everybody's actively engaged. So, this is one of those things where I really tried to. This isn't political. This is not a political issue. This is very much just a people issue. So,
Good way to put it. Yeah.
Anyways, it has been amazing.
So to turn the tide back in a more fun-loving direction, what is your favorite outdoor experience ever in your life? Doesn't have to be photographic.
Yeah.
Doesn't.
I got two, and I kind of thought you were going to ask this question, Ron, because I've listened to a lot of your guys' podcasts. And I was like, which one would I answer with? Well, I'd have to share, it would be between a Bobcat encounter and a Lynx encounter. And I always say it, experiences are always better shared with somebody. And I have a really good friend.
Let's talk about both, and then we'll vote.
Okay. So I'm going to start with my favorite, because like I said, experiences are always better when you share it with somebody. And I have a really good friend that we actually met through Instagram a couple of years back. His name's Mitch Deacock, and he's a fantastic photographer, and we're growing together, which has been great. Like, we have a lot of fun. So the last 2 years, when we met, we had this vision of trying to get on a wild lynx and a Canadian lynx, and I've seen a few in the wilderness before, but we wanted to get some good photos of them. So last year, the winter of 2023 to 2024, I think I put in endless days. I found one cat, learned a ton. And Mitch tried to get out as much as he could. He has a young family, beautiful young family. I don't have any kids, so I get a little bit more freedom. And then this winter, I spent 36 days out tracking lynx. And what we would do is I go out and try to track and pattern cats. And when it snows, fresh snow, get out there and slap on the snowshoes and go. And I'd pinpoint all of them. And Mitch is a data scientist, so it really works. I just gave him all the analytics, and he's like, "Wow, if we do this, and this," and it works. So we found this set of tracks with a mom and her two like older kittens, and so we go out, very fresh snow. We're out before the sun comes up, and we're pulling our snowshoes out, and we get about 5K in, and I look at and it's snowing on and off. And I look over at Mitch, and I'm like, "Mitch, look at these tracks. They are so fresh, like so fresh." I'm like, "We got to be really quiet." And he's like, "What, are we hunting for a wabbit? Like old Elmer Fudd, right?" And I said, "These cats are in this area right now." I'm like, and they're chasing rabbits back between these willows and this second growth. There's some spruce here. I'm like, they're going to come back out. So literally like moments after me saying that, these two young lynx come ripping out, chasing right across. And it was like on this side's like a second growth, like they replanted like Christmas trees. And on this side's got willows and a large spruce stand. So they run, and we're in the middle of like an old skid road in like between two big cut blocks. And these cats come running out, and I look at Mitch and I'm like, "Get down." So we hit the deck, and you can see, this is on my Instagram video. I'm so excited. And all I can hear is Mitch runs a D850 and I'm on an R5 Mark II. You guys know what's coming. Clack, 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 right? And it's just like shutters are going off, and these cats didn't care. They were chasing this snowshoe hare, and you could tell they're juvenile little, like 8-9-month-old cats, and they're running back and forth, and we're just spraying, like taking photos, and I couldn't believe how close they came up to us. And finally they looked at us, and for like a split second, we got our photos, and then they start kind of chasing the rabbit back in the bushes. And then the mom came out about 100 yards out at the very end of the skid road, and they did this loud, not a growl, but like a screech. So it was like, come on, you two little brats, get back here. And then they kind of go trotting off. And I have a photo on my Instagram of the cat like walking off, but still looking away into the bush. Like, where'd that rabbit go, Mom? I'm not ready to go. And I look over at Mitch. I'm like, did that just seriously happen? Like, that was amazing. And yeah, so that was probably my most favorite experience, because one, we did the work. It always is better when you put the work in. We've tracked and tracked and tracked for many days, patterned those cats, and it all came together. But to share that excitement with someone that just is as passionate about Lynx as I am, and that we learned it together, that is my best outdoor wildlife nature experience, I think, ever, for sure. Yeah.
I don't mean to pop the bubble on this thing, Danny, but I'm looking at, and I'm glad you mentioned the time frame, because it takes me right where I wanted to go next before you tell your next story. But if you look at your post on December 13th, 2023, I don't know if you realize this, but that technique that you used on that image is patented, and you have to pay Jason Loftus if you're going to take a photo like that. It's a
funny.
beautiful Lynx shot. But that technique can't be used without Jason's permission.
Yeah. Right. I'll send you my 2 bits later, Jason.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Oh, it's a beautiful shot in
really
the shadow.
Cool shot. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, we're fortunate enough to live in an area that we have some not a lot of cats. A lot of people ask, like, hey, will you take me out to see Lynx? I'm like, you got to be here. Be prepared for some long days, and be prepared for your heart to be broken, because you're going to sit on a spot for hours, or you're going to track and track and track, and you're not going to see anything. But man, when it comes together, it's worth it. It's so worth it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They are beautiful cats for sure. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
Such a thrill to encounter them. It's happened a handful of times in my life, and it's amazing how some of them are. It seems, and when you do find them, I mean, they're complacent with us, right? I mean, it's like they're not afraid of us, they're not aggressive towards us. They just do their thing. But they can, in the habitat they're in, they disappear so quickly, and especially smart looking in the wintertime for tracks. But my encounters have always been in autumn, and it's just fleeting and hopeful there's a window in the foliage to get the opportunity. But such beautiful, incredible creatures. Curious what it is. And I mean, everybody would understand and feel it. I mean, because of how amazing they are. But what drew you to these cats of all the species around? What was it was it their elusiveness? Was it?
Actually, it was one documentary, the Canadian Wild Year. Is that what it is, Mark? I think David Suzuki, narrates it. I saw that one, and it was actually Mitch originally, like, hey, we should try to go get some wild cats. I said, Mitch, do you know, like, these things are so hard. I said, but between the two of us, we can figure it out.
Nice.
And in the winter, you got to look for something to keep you through the winter season, because it can be a long winter up here. It's sometimes harder to get on some of the animals that we normally would get on. So the lynx were definitely, we knew they were in the area, they're trackable. But I just love wild cats, like bobcats, lynx. Eventually one day, from a safe distance, I want to get a good shot of a cougar. And I will reemphasize, so my wife listens to this, from a safe distance. Yeah. But the thing about the lynx is, like you said it, Mark, they're like they're called the gray ghosts for a reason. Like it's just, they vanish. But the other side too is that the first lynx that we were able to track down, and I got this on my Instagram story somewhere in there, but I didn't actually spot it. My wife did. She came with me, and I'm looking down at the tracks, and she's like, and she grabs me by the shoulder, and she's like, Lynx, Lynx, Lynx. And I look up, and that cat was watching us. They're so curious. A cat is a cat. I don't care whether it's a lynx or my house cat. They all have kind of the same tendencies. And I found with them, the encounters I've had, and I haven't had a lot, but I've had some decent ones now. Either you have a split second with them, or they get really curious, and you'll have a few moments with them. And on one of these cats that Mitch and I got on last year, it was really neat because it came out chasing that rabbit, and then it heard Mitch's D850, looked right at us, and then it kind of went up the bank. But then it sat down and it watched us for like, I'm not kidding, it started cleaning itself. And because it had the high ground, and we're sitting there. And I also knew at that point I was with the right guy, because we both put our cameras aside and we just were in awe. We watched this cat. We had this interaction. And I look over and I actually thought he was going to still be like looking through and trying to get the shot. And he was just like in awe as much as I was. And we just enjoyed it. And we said, you know what? It's time to go now. Like, that cat did not leave. She just sat up there and watched us, and we left. We left. But they're cats. They're so curious. They're elusive, absolutely, and that's kind of what keeps me going on them. And we found one lynx that had orange eyes versus green eyes this year. It just a different look on them. So like any other cat, they do, when you see them, they have personality about them, and they give you a different. We have the one photo, we call her Roxanne. I don't know why, because Mitch just started singing Roxanne when after we saw him, like, that's her name. Like, that was fitting. Just that sassy attitude. Yeah, it was neat. It was really neat. But if anyone has, I do highly recommend it. If wildlife photographers, you have lynx in your area, put the time in and track them in the wintertime and try. Just to know. Half the fun is following the tracks, because the tracks tell the story. And I think you guys have experienced this before. You're walking along and sometimes you're doing circles, and sometimes like, oh, they've got a rabbit here, got a snowshoe hare, and oh, it sat here on this log, and then what was it looking at? Like that, you can see that the snow was melted here. So this cat sat here for 15, 20 minutes. Like, you think, what's going through that cat's head? So you're living vicariously through that lynx as well. So you don't always have to just find the cat. You can go and track them. That's part of the fun of it.
That's cool, that connection with nature, in the sense where you try and feel their space and where they're at with any of these species, right? They're all out there living 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, doing their thing. Yeah. So to walk in their footsteps inspires you to feel their presence and what they might be doing, thinking, how they live. I think that just strengthens the connectedness that we have with any of these species. And I love that you highlighted that, because that's part of the wonder of wildlife photography, being out there, and then that observation opportunity.
Yeah. And in recreating their story, watching the tracks, you create your own. And that's the beauty of being out.
Become the lynx.
Yeah.
Be the lynx.
Yeah. Well, and that's how we learned how to get on them. We start to pay more attention. I'll give you a hack. I'll give everyone a hack here.
A pro tip?
A pro tip.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, if I give you a couple here to help, not just go in the bush and where do I even start? If you live in BC, I can only speak on where I live. I live in the Okanagan Valley, right? And we have to go up over 4,000 feet. 45 to 5,000 feet kind of seems to be the level where you're going to find them. You're going to want to find spruce trees, blue spruce. That's what the snowshoe hare are going to be hiding underneath. If you get blue spruce with any willows around it on an old skid road, get off the main roads. You're going to put some work in. Get a good pair of snowshoes and a good pair of warm winter boots. And you're going to start to see if you find snowshoe hare tracks, you're going to have lynx in the area. Just keep going back. And as soon as the weather pattern that kind of seems to be proven for us is if you have a low pressure system storm, so it's storming for a day or two, and you have a lifting pressure system, like it's lifting the next morning, get out there. Those cats get so active. It's like, I think they bunker down. There's not a lot of activity when it's heavy snow, and they need to feed, and they start to move, and they are just going back and forth, and they're smart. They use the roads, like the old skid roads and stuff, to ambush their prey. And that's kind of how we found, is that follow those tracks, find the patterns of them. And we found that a typical lynx won't go in the winter in our area more than usually about 4 to 5 kilometers. So what I do is I go and I pinpoint these cats and I get a pattern and I'm like, okay, this cat is literally locked in this 3 kilometers. There's food. It's comfortable. There's no threat to it. Why would it leave? Right. So that's what we do. And we literally, I am pinpointing of where it's going, crossing these crossings, and we set up and we get up there early. You got to go before first light, like get on the, put your headlamp on and get out there. And that's when you're going to find them moving around. So yeah, that would be my tip is like over 4,000 feet, 45 to 5,000 is ideal. Spruce trees with willows, and if you see a lot of snowshoe hare, just keep working that area. There's going to be some lynx. Yeah.
That's pretty valuable information. And the other tip I'd add is bring your buddy with a D850 because they'll look at you.
Yes. we were just out in the Rockies photographing some grizzlies, and I'm shooting, and I said, Mitch, are you going to start photographing here? I need to shutter. I need something for this bear to look up from eating dandelions. And sure enough, clack, clack, clack. Bear looks up. We get our photo.
That unmistakable D850 shutter.
Yeah. No sound like it. Yeah, he's talking about going mirrorless. I'm trying to think, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe just give it a while. Yeah.
You probably don't want to waste your money like that, Mitch. Just hang on to it.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna get Rachel his wife to listen to this now. So yeah, you don't need that.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Too funny.
Great camera. Great camera. I think I know. I met Mitch a couple of years ago, maybe a few years ago now. Yeah, maybe 3 out in the Rockies briefly.
Yeah,
didn't get a lot of time with him, but seemed like a really nice guy.
Oh, great guy. Super passionate. He's all about his family. His friends family and friends come for it. He's all about community. Yeah, I couldn't have picked like a better friend to go out and explore. I mean, you'll spend like 12 hours out and it's like, geez, I felt like, is it time to go home already? You just know you're having a lot of fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Kindred spirits all around.
That's right.
What's the Bobcat story? We gotta go back.
I was waiting for you to ask.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, this one is this was a close first or a second, I guess. But so I got a tip that from a friend that they said that they spotted a bobcat along this Forest Service road, and so I got that it was in this area. So one thing I learned a long time ago is if you want to find predators, your magpies and your eagles are your best friends, because it usually tells you that something's dead, right? If there's something, dead, there's going to usually be a predator potentially on it. So I went up this area, and I was actually coming back from work. So I'm actually living in my dress clothes, and I rip up this logging road, and it's about 3:00 in November, so it's about to get dark, and I see a bunch of magpies about 100 yards off this logging road. So I go tromping through there, and sure enough, I see this hind quarter of a deer that's been half buried. And then in that November, we got a lot of snow. We got like 2 feet of snow, which is a lot for us during that time of year. And I could see this track, like this very beaten down track of the bobcat going down in this ravine. And there's this really big fallen down ponderosa pine tree, and the track's going underneath it. I'm like, this cat is not going to go anywhere. It's not going to leave this food, and it's down there. I'm not prepared to, I'm already freezing because it was like minus 23 out. I'm in my dress shoes and dumb me. So I go home and I start going through all of our shelves and finding like as many snowsuits and ski suits I can find. So Marina, my wife, goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "You don't want to know about it. I'm just not going to work in the morning." She's like, "I'm not asking." Okay, I'm done. So I leave early in the morning. I think I get out there by just after 5 a.m. I'm wearing 4 ski suits. I bring a foam pad and I bring a white bed sheet with me because I knew this cat's not going to leave this spot. I am committed. I'm going to sit on this hind quarter from a distance, about 25 yards away or so, of where this cat's going to come back. So I sat there, contemplating my life's decisions. Am I doing the right thing? Should I be at work? And just about to where I'm about to leave, I see these 2 little ears pop up behind that fallen down ponderosa pine. All of a sudden, I'm warm again. And my heart's beating, and I know it's coming back. And I've got two photos on my Instagram of this cat, and I literally have this photo of it coming up, and its paw is like reaching, doesn't even know I'm there. And it came up a little closer than I thought it was going to. It was like only 15 yards away, if that, 10, 15 yards away. And I got this real intimate encounter with this bobcat. And I'd taken the pictures, and then it kind of glimpses my movement, and it sits up, and then I get that photo with the snow in front, creates that kind of natural dehaze look, and it looks up at me. And this thing was so vibrantly orange in the snow because we had all the snow around it. And it looks at me, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, what's going to happen here? And it just kind of gives me the side eye, and it walks over to the hind quarter, and it sits down on it, literally crosses its front paws, and no kidding, it starts to fall asleep. And I've got photos of it falling asleep on the hind quarter, but I didn't want to post it because of the hind quarter on there. That's my photo. And so I had about 20 minutes with this cat, and this surreal moment. And because I didn't know what it was, all it saw was probably my front of my lens and this white bed sheet over top of my head. And I got some amazing photos. And finally I could start to feel my toes. Well, not be able to feel my toes. And I'm like, I better go home. So anyways, I stand up, the cat kind of takes off. And I didn't go too far. It went about 50 yards away and sat there and watched me. And I went back to my truck, got home. Sure enough, I had borderline frostbite on my right big toe. It was totally worth it. So that was a moment. I'm like, who really ever gets an encounter with a wildcat like that? So I think about that. That photo's still my screensaver. I look at it all the time because it brings me back to that moment. And yeah, that was a fun moment. But I didn't have anyone to share it with, so that's why it's my second favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
awesome
really cool.
Encounter.
Yeah.
Good on you for doing it. Good on you for recognizing the variables and getting up in the dark and getting out there and trying.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I'll remind my wife that it was a good effort. She still thinks I'm nuts, but it's okay.
Three thumbs up.
You are.
Hillary got 3 thumbs up from Beyond the Wild.
That sounds good.
Frostbite.
What we do for a photo, right? Yeah.
That's right.
For the experience.
For the story.
For the connectedness.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wild planet Earth. That's cool.
I still get, I tell, I mean, that was 3 years ago now, I guess. And I'm still, as if you can see my excitement when I tell the story. I'm still,
Cloud nine.
That's what I love about it. You get to share these photos and you get to share the enthusiasm. And I've told that story hundreds of times to people, and I never lose excitement on it, and they get connected. I actually sold this one photo at it. I don't sell a lot of my photos because this is my hobby, my passion. And I have a good job, but I did one at Christmas market, and I sold the one photo, and the guy was contemplating, do I take both photos or not? And they were like 11 by 14s. He came back the next day to the booth, and he says, do you have that second Bobcat photo? I said, no, I sold it. He's like, he got really kind of upset. He's like, I went home and I told my wife what the story of this cat. And she says, why did you not buy the second photo of the cat walking up? You only have the photo of the cat looking like directly at the camera. He goes, is there any way I can get this printed? And I said, well, I kind of want to keep this one limited, but for you, I'll get it printed for you. He goes, well, can you get it to me tonight? I said, tonight? It's like 4:00 in the afternoon on a Sunday. He's like, I really want to put these photos up. I'm like, all right. Luckily, my printer in town does me a lot of solid. So I sent them a message. I picked it up on the way home and I dropped it off. And he already had the first one hung on his, he took 2 photos down off his wall, and he he had the first one already up, and he was waiting for the second one to go up, and his whole family was there. It's like, this is so awesome. We get this cat and this experience a part of our home. And I was like, that's awesome. And he says, I'll never look at a bobcat the same way because I grew up on a farm and my dad taught me bobcats, all they are chicken killers. And he goes, I'll never, ever look at a bobcat the same way. I'm like, right on.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. Danny, to bring this thing full circle, I just listening to those last couple stories, but to bring this thing full circle, I think you can hear when we talked about your job, and then we talk about these experiences that you've had, you can hear that passion, you can hear the excitement, the tempo in your voice speeds up, the volume in your voice increases. It's I think it speaks incredibly to the health benefits of getting out and spending time outside and just relishing the, not necessarily the silence, because really, as the world wakes up, there's a lot going on in a morning in the woods. But just to live in those moments, as you so eloquently put it in your story that day, um, I think it's important for all of us to keep that in mind, and keep in mind how important being out there is. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your, number one, your evening. So tell your wife thank you. And
I will.
number two, your stories for sure.
Yeah, your
Well,
passion comes through for sure.
thanks, guys. I really appreciate you reaching out, Ron, and I'm glad I'm glad I posted that, because it just the outreach of the community in such a good way. I know a lot of us feel this way, and it felt good not to feel alone in that matter. And it just reconfirmed I'm home in the right community. And I want to say, well, I got, like, again, to you three guys, like, my journey's been so far just a short journey, and as a wildlife photographer, I listened to you guys get me through some long, travel trips for work, and you've encouraged me on the days that you have gone out and maybe not had the best day in the field, and hearing your guys' stories, it just gets me fired right back up. So again, I want to thank the three of you, and doing what you guys are doing with these podcasts. There's a lot of people listening to these and getting fired up on them. So thank you so much for everything you guys do.
Thank you.
That's very kind of you. Yeah. And that means something to us for sure, because that's part of why we do this. So I wish you had some mountain goats on your page, by the way.
Yeah.
If you had some like fluffy billies and snow, I mean, that'd be cool if you had some of that. But
Yeah. Too bad, eh? That's kind of the other animal I'm obsessed with. That's my favorite. Yeah, I got a few of those photos.
I love it. Yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry. I could talk to you for another hour, I'm sure. So
yeah, another time, I guess.
Yeah, there we go.
Have we told unsuccessful stories on our podcast?
I don't
they were all
recall.
successful.
I don't recall any.
How fun would that be to do an episode of failed days?
Oh, every time somebody mentions JPEG, we do an episode on failed days.
I shoot JPEG.
We never bring that up anymore.
No, we let that go.
Right. Yeah.
Not your fault. You didn't consciously choose to. So,
Mark,
Danny,
you don't need to try to make him feel better.
You know what these jokers did? They went out. They didn't get I shoot JPEG tattoos. They got Ron shoots JPEG tattoos.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You're the only one that's seen those, Ron.
That's awesome.
It's all learning. We're learning all the time, no matter whether we're 1 month into photography or 30 years into it. It's a changing landscape on so many levels. And it's refreshing and welcoming to hear perspectives like yours, Danny, and your experiences, and how this hobby, passion, lifestyle connects people is wonderful. And I thank you for being on this episode and sharing that, because it's truly refreshing.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, guys, it's been a fun night. It's been interesting on a whole bunch of subject levels. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you to our sponsors, Pictureline and Canon USA. You can find more of our content on our website, beyondthewildpodcast.com. And until next time, thank you for tuning in, and enjoy early summertime. And that's a wrap for another episode of Beyond the Wild Podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA.